Fabrications, the fabric store nearest me, check them out if you're in the Ottawa area, not sponsored, has a thing on the first Sunday of every month called Scrappy Sunday, where remnants and offcuts are buy one, get one free. So I got some Tencel twill. Tencel is a synthetic fiber partially based on wood pulp, so it's supposed to be a little more breathable than polyester. Twill is a weave, but instead of just over, under, it's over two, under one, over two, under one, staggering, which is how it ends up with this very slight diagonal texture on the top. And so it's basically it's a stable fabric, so it's not going to stretch. This is a cotton jersey knit, which will stretch. That's basically t-shirt material. And my camera's not good at picking up reds, but these are almost exactly the same color. So here's my plan. The Tencel I am going to use to make a dress, and the cotton I am going to use to make sleeves, so that I have, a bit more stretch and mobility with the sleeves, because woven sleeves and I do not always agree with one another. I tend to have to make them rather large. These are the pattern pieces that I'm starting with. I only drafted a pattern for the bodice. I'm going to use a folded Canadian Tire flyer for the skirt, rather than extending the panels all that length. Has it got the pepper seal of approval? Inspection still in progress. I think we got it. Well, Pepper seems to have laid claim to the fabric for now. Pepper is occupying the cutting table, but the good news is she's on the excess fabric, so I potentially have room for cutting. The table itself has curved edges, so it's not exactly ideal when you're trying to cut long pieces. Oh, sure. I'll have to come over here. And I'm trying to do princess seams, so the pieces will be quite long. So I think rather than laying out more than one piece, I'll probably have to do them basically one at a time. Piece one is cut out, and now Pepper is right back on the fabric. May have to lock her in the bathroom in order to get the rest of it. Yes, you are very in the way. The back is not going on the fold because I'm planning to angle the skirt on both sides, so there's a bit of a sweep. Not quite a train, but, more skirt in the back than in the front. Okay, so all I have to do now is cut the back side panels, except I cannot find my pattern piece, which is bizarre because I had them all in a stack, and now it's not there. 5 minutes later. Found it. I had put the skirt piece on top of it. Of course, now I either have to wait or move the cat. There's a lot of long strips from the cutting remnants. And this fairly big panel, which I will probably use to make pockets. I just pinned the center back together. Since I did not bother pinning down the fabric when I was cutting out the pattern, you can see it slipped. So for example, the ends are not in the same place and the notches are not in the same place. So I had expected the fabric, which is a twill weave, to be a little stiffer than it is. It actually seems to be quite slippery, so I wasn't as careful with the cutting as I should have been. The thread I'll be using is more of an orangey red, but it's just a casual dress for me rather than a formal thing for someone else, and I don't think I'll mind. Also, generally speaking, if you're not doing top stitching, the thread does not show up much on the completed dress. Realized I actually do have a slightly pinker red thread, but again, I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference. Maybe I'll use that one for the front. The stitches are visible on the inside, but they're not extremely high contrast to the fabric itself. They shouldn't show up much at all from the outside. If you fold back the seam allowance, you can kind of get an idea for what visibility or lack thereof the outside seams will have. Attaching the side back, and once again the hem does not line up. So clearly my plan to just use the same panel to draft all the skirts was not actually a very good idea. We live and learn. I'm going to give the dress side pockets, but I'm also going to attempt a center front pocket, basically a tube hidden behind the front panel, so that it will also have seam openings rather than being a patch or cut in, but it'll basically just expand my pocket options, assuming of course that it works. I've sewn the pocket to the outside of the front panel, and if I'm right, then when I flip it, the seam allowance will be hidden when the pocket is in use. Really should have set up the tripod for this shot. I appear to have sewn the wrong side to the panel, because now I can't get at the pocket openings, and therefore I can't actually use it. Guess I'm going to have to retry that. So I had basically two options for how I could fix the pocket error. I could either unpick the sides and redo them, or I could unpick the top seam where I made the pocket into a tube and redo that. Or I guess I could cut the top and the bottom and sew this panel onto the sides and then just... Anyway, what I decided to do was redo the cylinder. This means that the seam allowance where I added the extra panel to get the pocket depth I wanted is going to be on the inside, which I'm not thrilled by, but it's bound with the selvage, so it's not that big a deal. So here things are going to get a little complicated. I am going to do the top part of the princess seam connecting the side front to the center front. Then I'm going to sew the tricky bit with the pocket attaching to the side front. And then I am going to do the skirt. But first, of course, I have to get the cat off my project. Thank you. You are a very cooperative girl just then. The center front is sewn to the front sides. It's got the pocket in the middle. Next, I will be sewing pockets to the side fronts and side backs, and then I will be sewing the front and back of the dress together. Controversial decision time. I did up the shoulder seams and the upper part of the side seams, just to the indicator notch. And I've decided that the side seams fall a bit too far towards my back to actually want to put in side seam pockets. So it's just gonna have a center front pocket, not a center front plus side seam pockets. Also during the try-on, I realized not only is the hem irregular, but I also cut it about a handspan and a half longer than I want it to be. So I'm just going to shorten the entire thing. Which is better than accidentally making it too short, though on the other hand I could just put a ruffle on it if it was too short. I think when I arranged the skirt panel, I measured it from my waist rather than from where the hem of the bodice pieces would go. I used thread pulling, drawing a single thread out from side to side in order to get a straight line for cutting to initiate the new hem, since there's quite a lot to cut off. I also unpicked the side seams up to those points, redoing the knot higher up, so that way I won't just have a fraying seam when I cut them. Well, I got it trimmed, and now it is once again a cat bed, even though I specifically left her some fabric to sit on. But the one that I'm using is just so much more enticing, isn't it? Pocket update. This side I have not done any understitching yet to attach the seam allowance to the pocket bag. And on this side I have. So as you can see, the pocket bag is not creeping out on this side, but still is on this side. So this looks like a much cleaner line, even though I haven't actually pressed anything. I'll press it at some point, I'm sure. Or maybe I won't. Okay, the dress is constructed. Now I've got all these raw seams on the inside. And as a fan of Bernadette Banner's YouTube channel, I am going to try the method that she swears by, turning and felling. So I'm going to cut one half of the seam allowance down to a much narrower width, then fold the other half over, and then over again to conceal the raw edges, and then stitch it down. I am going to use the pinker of the two red threads that I have for this, because this will show very slightly on the other side. Worth noting, I don't actually know if turning and felling is a good idea on curved seams, or if it's just something to do for straight seams. So, I'm going to be finding out about that. While I was sewing this, it felt like I was making the seam allowances pretty large, but this fabric actually frays a lot. So, now that I'm trying to do a turned felled seam, it actually feels really narrow. I flatlined around this curve and down this line to the bottom of the pocket, and then I decided to quickly flat fell the first few centimeters all the way around each armhole, the neckline, and the hem, because I was hoping to quickly hem it and finish the armholes and neckline to wear it at a family gathering later today. I don't think I'm actually going to have time to do that, but that would be an option for somebody else to do on a project if anyone else wants to take inspiration from that idea. Just finish the seams where they will intersect with the edge finishes, so that then you can go back and finish the longer seams later. Also, right here, the seam allowance had frayed a little bit too much to fold over and flat fell in place. So I just went around the edge with blanket stitches to hopefully keep it from fraying more than it already has. Went around and hemmed it. It's a little wobbly because I didn't press it, but I think the hem turned out pretty nice. Normally I do a combination ladder stitch and prick stitch, but this time I did a felling stitch, which I think it leaves a little bit more thread exposed at the top of the seam, but I do think that the pinkish red thread is a pretty good color match, so it's not like jarring. Also, something I'm noticing, with felling the seams, it really attaches the seam allowance to the main body of the fabric. So to my fellow autistics, if you've been thinking about learning to make or alter clothing, but you haven't wanted to do it because seam allowances, or you're wanting to do it because seam allowances against your skin bug you, flat felled hems. That's not a sensory issue that I have personally, but it is one I have heard about. This hem took me 3 hours. This neckline took me over 2 hours. It's considerably smaller, but I had to do a little snip here in the center front because otherwise it would be really puckered. And so then I had to very carefully put this little facing on this area, so that way it's smooth all the way around on the outside, rather than having this one spot where it's, like how I did the buttonhole stitch here, blanket stitch. Okay, the 2 front seams are felled. Just 5 more seams to go. Yay! To clarify, I do really like this technique. I just think that I put myself on hard mode by doing it with curved princess seams instead of all straight seams. Also, as I said before, this fabric does fray more than anticipated, so I don't have quite as much seam allowance to play with as I had originally accounted for. And as a synthetic, it's also rather springy, so it takes like all my pins to hold down the seam allowance for just one seam. Okay, at this point, I have all the curved seams flat felled, so I just have the 2 side seams and the center back seam to go. The supervisor is giving her inspection. Yeah. And I am starting to wonder if I actually do want to insert sleeves, or if I want to just turn in and close up if I want to essentially hem the armholes, and then I can have it as a sleeveless dress, or potentially wear it with a sleeve top underneath. So, decisions, decisions. What do you think, Pepper? Thank you for your input. I've decided I'm gonna make it sleeveless, at least for now. If I hate it, I can add sleeves later. Just to give a sense of the rate at which I'm putting this together, it took me half an hour just to go all the way around this with pins, because, I'm having to place them so close together with this curve. And from here to here, stitching almost halfway around took 45 minutes. So probably each armhole is going to take about an hour and a half. Hello, Inspector. Okay, it actually only took 40 minutes to sew the other half, but still, between the pinning and the sewing, that is nearly 2 hours. The center back seam that Pepper is approving right now took me 2.5 hours to sew, but I think that was because I was doing it left-handed. Wanted to give my right wrist a break. Okay, at this point you just have to laugh. Because the seam allowance has ended up so narrow due to the fraying, I'm having to pin things very close together, so the pins are about a centimeter apart, which means I don't actually have enough pins to pin the entire side seam down. So I'm going to start up here, and as I go past those pins, I will be able to pin that gap. Okay, that also took nearly 2 hours. Time to fill the final seam. This one had a wider seam allowance, so I was actually able to pin everything instead of running out most of the way through. It's finally done! It's not a super swooshy twirly skirt, but it was never intended to be that. It's very light, very comfortable, something I can move in, something that hopefully will stand up to the summer heat. As you can tell, I am a very professional model. The skirt is long enough that I can sit down with the pocket being usable. I really like the way that the seams fall on this overall. I'm quite pleased with the design. The skirt is also mid-calf length, which, in addition to meaning there's enough skirt to sit down on, there is also not so much skirt that I end up tripping over it on the stairs. And if you're wondering if I can layer it, I can. Ta-da! Thumbs up and subscribe!